Hi everyone, YouTube fans. It's winter time and we can't really drive the car because we got like 3 feet of snow out there. And we can't drive the car because I 69 the throttle body. Yeah. Well, I bought that throttle body on China Bay. And China Bay actually does sell American stuff too. But I bought that throttle body on China Bay thinking that I was going to save a few bucks. 102 millimeter throttle body. Looks exactly like the Sniper Holly makes and a few other brands I'm not going to mention. I don't want to knock Holly because most of their stuff's made in the States and Canada. Some of their stuff has been outsourced through China, which is that kind of sucks. But that being said, I took that thing off and I 69'd it. Unfortunately, I had an MSD throttle position center sensor on it. I can't even speak here. And an idle air control motor, which was both MSD, and you know what? Maybe that's Chinese too. I don't know. Anyways, I ended up ordering a Nick Williams throttle body, 102 millimeter, because the reason why I took that off in the first place is I noticed that my throttle keeps hanging up when I do drive the car. I got the Holly display screen up, and it shows you what your throttle position sensor's at, and every once in a while it'll hang up. It'll stay at 2 or 1. You know, it's supposed to be at 0 when you're idling. And I couldn't figure out what was wrong, but it's funny. The day I seized up my motor, way back in the day, I didn't have enough coolant in the radiator, and that was the reason why I actually seized up the motor. My stupidity. The thing was leaking, and I never really looked into it, and it kept on leaking and leaking until it was like quite a bit of fluid out of there, and then there wasn't enough to maintain cooling. And I was really pushing the car, so I ended up seizing the motor. Just one of the cylinders got seized up. And not that being said, anyways, I solved all those issues and stuff. The coolant's fully, you know, it's all up and everything. I got the stroker motor in here now. But I decided, I think I'm going to go with the Nick Williams throttle body because it's made in the States. I've heard nothing but good stuff about it. I was going to buy a Phytech loaded, they call it, 102 millimeter throttle body. But after thinking about it for a little while, you know what? For 225 bucks for a throttle body with the throttle position sensor on and an IAC motor, that thing's made in China. It's probably a piece of junk. Then I went onto YouTube and I checked out a few guys that bought those things, and sure enough, they're there sanding away the bore inside where the throttle blade is because the thing's not closing properly. Wouldn't you know it, huh? Anyway, so I decided, you know what? Instead of wasting my time and trying to get this thing to idle properly, it idled properly when it was in idle in park, but as soon as you put it into gear and start driving, and temperature changes, and who knows what that bullet aluminum that the Chinese are using, it's probably got more tin in it than aluminum, and it's probably why the thing it expands too much, or the throttle blade expands too much and it sticks. I don't know. I had nothing but a hassle with it. I ended up putting an extra spring on the throttle to close it, which worked. The only thing is now your gas pedal is really, really stiff, and I didn't like it. It was uncomfortable. That being said, with a lot of things with these LS motors, you go onto eBay, and you're looking for parts. You know, in my opinion, and I don't want to be, you know, the guy that tells you what to do. That's up to you. But in my experience and in my opinion, stick with American-made stuff because they're way better. Chinese stuff are just junk. I mean, there are some Chinese things that are okay, but from my experience, most of the stuff has been nothing but problematic. So now I'm waiting on a throttle position sensor and another IAC motor also I ordered through China Bay, but it's actually OEM, Delco, whatever, and I'm pretty sure those are made in Mexico, and I was looking at the photo and it showed on the IAC motor on where the plug goes, Mexico, so I'm pretty sure it's OEM. I ordered those instead of the MSD ones because the MSD one was double the price, and I'm kind of suspicious about the MSD one. Not that I had any trouble with them. And that's another thing. When I did get my throttle body from eBay, the original 102 millimeter China throttle body, it came with the IAC motor and it came with a TPI sensor, and it was like $120 Canadian. Think about it, folks. $120 Canadian for a throttle body with those two sensors on it. I mean, if you go to the dealer, the IAC motor is like 80 bucks. So, you know, you got to ask yourself, what am I buying here? I mean, it looked great. Don't get me wrong. It looked like really nicely machined, looked very professionally built and everything, but I'm telling you, it was just, they're no good. I was suspicious about the IAC motor because when you start the thing up, it really makes a loud whistling sound, air getting sucked in. And I realized that throttle body wasn't that good the day I blew the motor, as I said before, because what happened was the motor was running so hot it got so hot that the temperature expansion of that throttle body ended up becoming, everything was like lined up properly. The clearances were all right because it was so hot that it was actually functioning perfectly. And the thing idled amazing. It was like, you know, stopping at the lights, no problem. You think you had a stock motor in there with a stock throttle body and stock camshaft and everything. It idled perfectly. It stopped at the lights. It was not even a little bit of a hesitation. It was amazing until I, of course, seized the motor up. Now that I got the 416 stroker in here, I decided, you know what, I better just spend the extra money. Yeah, it's 3 times the price of a Chinese throttle body. It's 3 times the price, or it's twice the price of a Holley one, which I think is still a Chinese throttle body. I wouldn't touch it. It looks exactly similar to the Chinese one. Even the engraving, 102 millimeter on the throttle blade, looks identical. So that kind of makes me wonder. So stay away, take my advice, save yourself a lot of hassle and money, and go with an American brand. BBK is another brand that they sell. It's American made. I'm not sure what the reviews on that are, but it seems like they're okay. So that's the reason why I'm not driving the car now. Plus there's 3 feet of snow out there and it's damn cold. It's like really cold with the wind chill. It's like minus 18 Celsius, which is pretty nasty. You don't want to be standing outside too long. You'll freeze to death if you're not dressed up properly for it. So yeah, that's all I've been doing. Waiting for the weather to get a little bit better. I should have the throttle body hopefully by the end of the week, probably the end of the month, which is not that far away. I could put that in and I'll have the throttle position. I ordered the throttle position sensor and the IAC motor from a different vendor. And I'm just waiting on the parts so I can put that back together again and retune it, the idle and all that, and go from there. So yeah, that's all I've been doing is kind of like waiting around for parts and waiting for this winter to go by and so on. Anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in and watching. Oh, another thing I wanted to say, I had a couple of guys text me on YouTube, ask me, you know, does the motor blow any oil or anything like that? And no, it doesn't. It's actually doesn't burn any oil. The exhaust is pretty well. When I first tried tuning it up, of course, it was shooting a little bit of black smoke because it was running really rich. I didn't have the tuning proper. But once I got the tuning going properly, every time I started it up, even on startup, there was no puff of blue smoke that you normally see in a car that, like, for example, had dried out valve seals. And then the smoke goes away. This thing has no smoke whatsoever, and I've been checking the oil level. I didn't put a lot of miles on it. I think I probably maybe put 100 miles on it so far. It's got like nothing, because when I did finally put this motor together, it was already October, and winter was coming in pretty quick. So I didn't have a chance to drive it much. And as far as horsepower goes, a lot of guys are asking, well, what cam do you got in the car? How much horsepower it has? A couple of guys are knocking on the LS3 saying, oh, they don't make that much power. I seen a YouTube video where the guy only made a 475 horsepower, putting a bigger cam than I have in it. And I'm like, well, that engine was designed for boost. It only had 9-to-1 compression. So that makes a huge difference right there in itself. That's like 100 horsepower difference having 9-to-1 to 11-to-1. So you guys got to understand, raising compression ratio makes a huge difference in power. But of course, there's a balance there. You go only so high, depending on what kind of fuel you got in your city. Otherwise, you're going to start running into issues where you got to run to the race shop and buy racing fuel to mix with it to get the thing to run right. And I didn't want to take that route, so I stuck under 11.5-to-1. So it's around 11.3-to-1. A couple of other guys asked me, I'd like to know how your pistons stick out of the bore. Well, I got to say, the factory engine, which used to be an L92, which was like in Escalades and stuff, which is exactly like an LS3, same motor. I think the only difference was the intake valves don't have the hollow stems, and the camshaft is different. Other than that, it's the same block, same pistons, same crankshaft, same rods, same cylinder head, same everything. That being said, the compression height of the factory pistons were 1.115, and the compression height of the Summit Racing Forge pistons that I bought are 1.110, so they're 5 thou lower into the deck. And I had the deck milled on the block, and I had my heads milled. Well, having the heads milled doesn't really make a difference, but having the deck or the deck height milled on the block, that makes a difference. So on completion, I got a micrometer. I got a small micrometer that I could use for little things like that, and I checked it out, and I got about 20 thou coming out of the holes, which is acceptable. My head gasket was Felpro, and it's crush is 0.037, so I got 17,000 of an inch clearance between my cylinder head and my pistons. It's pretty close, but it's safe. 20,000 is reasonable. You don't want to go any more than that. You go any higher than 20,000, you're going to need a bigger head gasket, and you might run into other issues with it knocking and stuff, and the cylinder compression, and the explosion flow inside the cylinder may be offset because of the difference in the spacing in there between your head and the gasket and the piston. So there's a lot of things you got to put into consideration. And even that, people measuring compression ratio, I was going to end the video and here I am going off. Even that, people measuring compression ratio aren't putting into consideration, they're measuring their CC of their cylinder heads and whether their pistons are dished or they got valve reliefs, and they're putting that into consideration. But nobody's putting into consideration the space between the piston and the first ring. There's at least 1 cc right there, if you do the math, especially with the performance pistons, because they got a really, really thick upper ring crown, so there's more space there, so it's stronger, if you guys know what I'm talking about. And that makes a difference. So that's extra volume right there that people don't even talk about. And if you want to blueprint the motor, there's all those little things got to be put into consideration. Me gapping my rings when I did this, because I was thinking about going with boost later on. I was on the conservative side. I went with 20 thou on the first ring, on the upper ring, and I went 22 thou on the second ring, and 15 thou on the oil rings. And that's conservative, and it's just pretty well perfect, because when the motor does warm up, there is no blow-by, there is no oil burning whatsoever. In case some of the guys, that watched me gapping one of the cylinders was thinking that, hey, that's too much of a gap, you're going to have blow-by, you're going to burn oil, and this and that. It doesn't do any of that. So you got to be conservative, but I didn't want to leave it stock, because stock would be, they basically go 4 thou for every inch. If your bore is 4 inch, you want to go 16 thou on your gap. If you're going with boost, you want to go probably 2 to 4 thou more, is what I did. And you'll be safe, and you'll be fine with it. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully, as soon as I get this throttle body, I'll shoot another video, and I'll have it in there, and I'll probably take it for another spin. Hopefully, the snow all melted, because we got up and down weather over here in Ontario. It'll snow. There'll be 3 feet of snow on the ground. Then it'll melt. Then it'll come back. Then it'll melt again. It'll be all dry. There'll be no snow on the grass or anything, but it'll be cold outside. But at least the roads are clear, and you can go for a spin. So I'm waiting for one of those days. Hopefully, I get the throttle body by the end of the week, next week, and I'll put it on, and hopefully by then the weather will be above 0 for a little bit, and everything will melt, and I could be able to take it for a spin. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.